All right, thank you. Hello, everyone, and thanks so much for joining. Tonight is the third quarterly Friends of DeKalb Parks meeting. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Lauren King Lambert, one of the newer project managers with DeKalb RPCA. Tonight we're going to walk through how registered Friends of the Park groups in unincorporated DeKalb can tap into Park Pride's grants to turn great ideas into real park improvements. We'll focus on the DeKalb specific process so you know exactly how it goes. This meeting is being recorded and will be available on YouTube. I'll also send out the slides after the meeting. Before we get rolling, I'd like all RPCA and Park Pride staff on the call to quickly introduce themselves and their role. And while they go around, please add your name, park, and email to the chat so we can connect after the meeting. All right, let's start with RPCA. Caleb?
Hi, everyone. I'm Caleb Wittenmeyer. I'm the Green Space Manager for RPCA.
And I'm Paige Singer, Assistant Director for Recreation, Parks, and Cultural Affairs.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew White. I am a licensed landscape architect, and I am Director of Grant Making and Implementation at Park Pride.
I think that's everyone. Thank you so much. So, welcome again. Here's what we're talking about tonight. Who Park Pride is and how they partner with RPCA, what their grants can fund, the DeKalb specific grant timeline and key milestones, how to make sure your project is eligible, and understanding match funding, what counts, and how to collect it. Also going to talk about what happens after you are awarded a grant, such as site visits, approvals, agreements, and construction. Feel free to pop questions into the chat as we go. If we don't get to them live, we'll follow up by email. All right, I'll pass it over to Andrew.
Thank you. Park Pride. So what is Park Pride? Park Pride is a nonprofit 501c3 organization based here in Atlanta. We're locally based. And we have been working in partnership with communities as well as the city of Atlanta and DeKalb County to improve parks through various means, including volunteering, coordinating volunteer projects. We do park design assistance through our visioning program. And we also offer grants and capital support for projects that through our grant making program. So we've been working in DeKalb County for the last 10 years, in Atlanta for the last, since 1989. But yes, the grant making program is an important part of the services we offer that delivers direct financial support for capital improvements in parks.
Thank you. All right, and I'll call on you again to talk about what these grants can fund, and maybe I'll add some things at the end.
So our grant program is mainly designed to support new additions to parks. Oftentimes groups come to us with ideas about repairing existing features in parks, and those kinds of projects are not eligible for grant funding. If you think about it, it's helpful to think about sort of a before and after picture. So if your before and after picture look too similar, then it's not really, it may not be eligible for a Park Pride grant. So what we're really looking to do is move the needle and change something, add a new feature, add something new to the park as like a new capital improvement. So this is not really a deferred, a way to address like issues around deferred maintenance. But people find, there's plenty that does fit into our grant program, such as playgrounds, public art. We fund seating, benches, signage, wayfinding, trails, community gardens, park beautification. Yeah, so I mean, there is a broad range of things that can fit into the scope of a Park Pride grant.
Great, thank you. And yeah, just
I-
like, oh, go.
I say before we move on, we do have a hand raised by Katie Payton. I hope I'm saying that right. So I'm going to go ahead and allow you to unmute yourself if you want to ask your question.
Hey y'all, thanks. That was a total misfire. I'm cooking dinner and had a kid tap my phone. I am
Oh.
listening in, but don't have a comment.
No problem. All right, I'm going to go ahead
I'll
and
lower
lower
it.
your hand
Yeah,
and just
thank
want to
you.
make sure you didn't have a question.
I appreciate that.
No problem.
Thanks, Paige. I was wondering about that too.
Okay, so yeah, just like Andrew was saying, when it comes to capital projects, we're talking about built amenities. So yeah, like playgrounds, pavilions, fitness equipment, benches, walking trails. A lot of times we get asked about landscaping and invasive species removal. That can be part of your larger capital project, but it can't be that on its own. Also, we get asked a lot about projects that have ongoing operational costs, like lighting, security cameras. Those are also not eligible. Neither are programming, stipends, fundraising expensive, community engagement costs, or staff time. If you're ever unsure whether something qualifies, especially maintenance versus capital, check with RPCA early on. All right. Okay, so sometimes it's unclear who does what in the grant process. So here's the breakdown. Park Pride is the grant administrator and funding partner. They make final funding decisions, verify your match, support you with community engagement, and guide you through the process. RPCA, we are your project scoping management team. We provide guidance through the county approval process, schedule the initial site visit, and issue letters of department support. The Friends Group, they are the project champion. The Friends Groups lead the application, engage your community to set priorities, coordinate with Park Pride and RPCA. They fundraise and collect matches and celebrate with a ribbon cutting once it's done. All right, so here's what we're going to be going through with the rest of the presentation. This is the grants count timeline in unincorporated DeKalb. So each of these we're going to be going on, and if at the end you want to go back to anything, we can absolutely do that. Okay, Andrew, would you kick us off on this slide, and I'll add if anything is else.
Yes. So the first thing you want to do is when you're thinking about potentially pursuing a grant is thinking about your park, the way the community uses the park. And a great starting place is if your park has a master plan or a vision plan from either the county or Park Pride that has been done. Those are a great starting place because they've already gone through a process of community engagement. There are already a list of projects, potential projects there that you might be able to select from. So that's really a wonderful place to start if you want to sort of mine those documents for information or ideas for your grant project. And it's always a good idea as you're starting down this path to connect early with both Park Pride and RPCA, which is the Recreation, Parks, and Cultural Affairs, DeKalb County. And yeah, so when you're thinking about your project, you want to think about what's achievable, what's buildable, what's constructible, and a great way to do that is by referencing your master plan. Now, if you don't have a master plan, that may be a good next step for you, is to pursue a master plan or a vision plan, either by either through Park Pride or through the Parks and Recreation Department. So that's a great way to start thinking about it. And then as your project ideas start to come together, it will probably become clear very quickly which kind of grant you want to apply for. So we currently offer two different kinds of grants. The first is called a small change grant, and those are grants up to $2,500. And those are really meant to be sort of almost like a practice grant, if you think about it that way. The restrictions on those are a little looser in that those can be used to pay for things like invasive removal potentially, or sort of smaller projects to kind of get you started on your pathway. Those are available on a rolling basis year round. So they aren't tied to the calendar in the same way that the larger capital improvement grants are. The small change grants can be used for small, like beautification, if you want to buy some plants for your park, or maybe your group, needs something that that could be paid for with a small change grant. People are often surprised, I'll just say, about how far $2,500 will go when it comes to park improvements. I will tell you, it does not go far. It really is a small thing for more of a community-based kind of a project support, if you think about it that way. The other kind of grant that you can do, if it goes more than $2,500, which if you, I'll also mention that all of our grants require a match, or most of our grants require a match unless you're in a specific geography known as a qualified census tract, in which case you're eligible for no match grants. So if you think about a small change grant, awards up to $2,500, if that's matched dollar for dollar, that's about a $5,000 investment in the park. So, $2,500 get you halfway there. And then, and I'll also mention that match, do we talk about match later and what that can constitute? Okay.
Yes,
I'll talk
we
about
do.
that later then. If your project goes beyond the capacity of a small change grant, you should be looking at a capital improvement grant, and those are up to $50,000 typically. There are exceptions to that, but rare exceptions, I'll say. And those are tied to the calendar year. And I believe that the rest of this conversation is mostly focused on those capital improvement grants in terms of like step 1, step 2, step 3. There's many steps you have to go through in order to get a capital improvement grant, and funding is not guaranteed in those. Those are competitive. They are intensive and require a lot of pre-work to get to even the application. So I think that covers it. Is there anything I left out?
No, that was great. I will say that, yeah, this is mainly talking about capital improvement, but in a condensed way, small change grants follow the same steps. So, and unless anybody wants to hear the QCT dictionary definition, I'll move on. Okay, so grant eligibility. This is specifically for grants in unincorporated DeKalb. So to be eligible, your project must be led by a registered friends group on RPCA managed property, be supported by RPCA and fit our maintenance and policy standards, have no open Park Pride grants or active visioning processes going on at the park, your project must be in your master plan or backed by a strong community documentation. And your project must not require permits or already have permits in hand. And your group must have a proven track record, regular workdays, and ideally a completed small change grant. So like Andrew was saying, it's a practice. All right, Andrew, did you take this one too?
All right. So this gets into the calendar of our grant cycle and how to get plugged into that process. The first step, actually, which isn't listed here, but the very first step that we ask every group to do every year is in January. We ask groups to register as Friends of Park groups for the calendar year. And as part of that registration process, we ask you to identify the kinds of things that your group is going to be focusing on over the next 12 months. That could include volunteer projects. It could be getting more community involvement in the park. It could be grants, capital improvements, physical changes. And that's how we start our initial outreach. So if a group identifies that they want to pursue a grant in the upcoming year, then that tells us that we need to do some outreach to those groups. We do make these opportunities available to all the groups in DeKalb, but it does help us to know as soon as possible, really in the calendar year, if your group is interested in pursuing a grant. And the first step in that is to submit a questionnaire, and that form is due in May. So it's a very brief, simple online form that you fill out that just tells us a little bit about your group, about what the project is, about what the impact will be in the community. So identifying the need for the project, and then anything else that we ought to know, like is it a project that was identified in a master plan? Is it what kind of support? Have you had conversations with your community about this yet? Have you had conversations with DeKalb County about this yet? And it gives us a good base understanding of what it is you want to achieve. And after submitting the questionnaire, you'll be invited to what we have as a grant orientation. And it's sort of like what this meeting is, but it's every year there are tweaks, little changes we make to the program. So it is important that you attend and make use of that or those orientation materials, because those are going to set you on the path to a successful application. And we share all of the questionnaires that we get with DeKalb County, so that they can also start to do their own work, because in DeKalb County with our grants, the county actually carries a lot of water in terms of getting your project ready for an application. And they also carry a lot of water in the execution of the grant after they've been awarded. So I believe that, okay, and then I see down at the bottom, after DeKalb County gets the questionnaires, then they will also do their own outreach and schedule site visits with you. And I think that's the next step. Is that right, Lauren?
You got it.
Okay.
Thank you, Andrew.
You're welcome.
And then so after you're connected with Park Pride and they share their list, we will reach out and schedule a site visit and with you and review the scope and constraints of your project. Then you'll get a RPCA project manager who will prepare a cost estimate. If you need a match, we'll help you map out where it will come from. In late August, you'll do a 10-minute presentation to the RPCA director. If approved, you'll receive a letter of department support. In that presentation, you'll share your budget, site plan, and a clear story of the community benefit. All right, and now we're going to talk about the matching funds. So matching funds matter. They prove community investment and make your application stronger. I'm going to ask Paige to come on and talk about the sources of where those can come from and some tips.
Sure. Thank you, Lauren. And thank you all for joining us tonight. We get a lot of questions about match funds and what that means in a couple different references, especially because most of the funds that have been supporting grants up till now are what are called bond funds, and we are running low on those. Those were our 2001 and 2006 bonds. So those accounts are being depleted, but there are several other ways to make a match. The first is SPLOST funds. So those are the special project local option sales tax funds. And again, the department oversees any capital budgets, but Park Pride is amazing at working with us. If there's any amount of money that's coming into the park that you wish to see a project in, we can utilize SPLOST funds to support that as a match. The next type of fund is volunteer labor. It's called in kind. And I know we talk about maintenance activities not counting towards a grant application. However, if your group has beautification days set up where they're working in the park and it's part of that grant project, you can use your labor as in kind. And there is a labor rate. Lauren has put it here. It's $31.80 an hour. And a great way to track that is have those sign-in sheets. So you fill out that beautification form, and then you'll have a sign-in sheet, and then you can use that as your match for the grant. This is an excellent way for a small change grant to have. You probably can hear my my lady in the background. Sorry about that. Anyway, that's a great way to get your match for a small change grant. So maybe you're doing a planting project. You can use in-kind labor to do your digging of the holes. Maybe you're buying your topsoil, and then Park Pride can fund the actual plant. So that's a great way to do a small change grant. Another one is utilizing commissioner funds. Like I said, they're not all depleted, but a lot of the bond is, but the commissioners do get some funds every year. We do ask that that comes from the department. So that way the commissioners are ensured that it's a supported project through the department. And then we'll have a letter drafted from them because that all goes into the legislation. And then another great way is coming to the department. A lot of the projects, and that's what we encourage master plan or visioning plan projects, is because they're projects that the department wants to do anyway, and we can help leverage those dollars. So playgrounds, obviously, playground, we want it to look in keeping with the size of the park and attractive to all user groups. And so if it's something that needs to be replaced anyway, and we want to bring a new unique element into the park, we can work with you with that. And also for the small change grants, cannot stress that enough, $2,500 to the department in order to get something on the backside. Again, just wanting to leverage those dollars. And then last but not least, fundraising. So if you do have a project, and a lot of times you have donors in your area, people that want to give money towards a specific project in the park. So we've listed some here through plant sales and yard sales and fun runs. You can actually go to local businesses. And that we do ask, if you're going to use community fundraising activities, that you have that fiscal account set up in the Park Pride thing, so we can just ensure that when we have that money come through. So I'm going to kind of wrap up talking about how these funds come to us, because we haven't really talked about that yet. So DeKalb County upfronts all the money for the grants. So basically, once the project has been approved and all of the award is in place, DeKalb County actually goes and we upfront all of the money, the total cost of the grant. And then what happens on the backside is we get reimbursement from Park Pride for the award. So this is why this is really important to talk about. What triggers us to upfront the money is the legislation. So any of these projects, because they meet the criteria for what needs to be considered a donation to the park and to DeKalb County, requires legislation through our Board of Commissioners. So that's why it's just key that we have all of these elements in place before we take that legislation to the board. Once that happens, we just want to make sure that we're going to get our money back. It's as simple as that. So that's why those letters of support and having the department director and us assisting with any commissioner matches, that's what's key there. So no, that's a lot of information. That's why when we go through this process, we do the site visit with you. We work with you to get those estimates. We really, and I was talking to Lauren about this earlier, it's on us to work through our system. We are government, and it's not an always easy process, and it's sometimes lengthy, but that's why we're here. We don't have the expectation of the friends groups trying to navigate through government processes. So we're here to assist with estimates and our procurement policy, and just make sure that all the, everything, all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. So that's it for matching funds. If anybody has any questions, let me know, because like I said, I know that was a lot of information. And please don't forget kind of monitoring the chat just to put your friends group, or even if you're not a friends group, if you're interested in one, just so we kind of know who y'all are this evening.
Thank you, Paige. So again, start securing match letters early, keep good records of volunteer hours, and consider fiscal sponsorship with Park Pride. Okay.
I would just say, just to add to what has been said about fiscal sponsorship, that's what that is that you use Park Pride's 501c3 status to raise money for your park, so that any donations that people give to your park, those funds that we receive are put into a separate account that's only for that park, and the donations become then tax deductible because they're donating to a nonprofit, and we send out the letters and do all the taxes, so you don't have to. But it's a nice service that we offer.
Thank you. And I'll pass it over to you, Andrew, for these next two. They are Park Pride's next pieces of the application.
Okay, so imagine you have submitted your questionnaire in May. You've gone to the orientation. You've met with DeKalb County Parks and Recreation staff, and you've assembled now this package of your grant that you're ready to submit. And it's got a budget, it's got a clear scope, and so you're ready then to submit your letter of intent. Okay. And that is coming right on up this year. Actually, it's just in a couple weeks. It's usually the first week in September when those are due. They are sort of like the questionnaire, but more, right? Like, we want more information in the letter of intent than you gave us in the questionnaire. If you think about the questionnaire as being maybe 30% done, the letter of intent, by the time you get to the letter of intent, you should be at about you should really be at like 90 to 100% ready in terms of conceiving your project with a tight budget, and you know exactly how much it's going to cost, and and the county has been working with you to do that. Okay, so the letter of intent, contrary to its name, is an online form. It is not a letter that you write, right? It is formatted the same as a questionnaire. And it is the next step in the process that lets Park Pride know that you intend to apply for the grant, that you are ready, and that you are fully intend to do that. At that time, you need to present to Park Pride any letters of support that you have from the community. You are going to absolutely need a letter from DeKalb County that demonstrates support from the landowner, which is the DeKalb County Parks Department. And you can also submit any other letters of support that you think might strengthen your application. As I said, this is a competitive process, and so anytime you can add that little something extra that maybe differentiates your application, that can only help you. So getting that letter of intent together by early September is your next step. And what that will trigger is then a site visit from Park Pride's grant committee, which is a committee of our board of directors, and they are the ones who make the ultimate decision of which projects are funded at that cycle. So that's the next. So and once you submit your letter of intent, that will trigger outreach from me to you to set up a time that we can have a site visit with members of the grant committee and you, so that we can see the site, we can sort of visualize what it is you're imagining, what your project is, and you can share with us, in your own words, why the project is important, and what kind of impact it would have in your community. So that's what we're really looking for, and that's that phase of the project.
Excellent, thank you. So we're going from September to October, and now early November. What's happening with Park Pride?
What is happening? So by November, we will have completed our site visits, and and this is when you will be invited to submit your final application. After we now I will share that this is my first year as Director of Grant Making and Implementation. So this will be my first year going through it myself. And my understanding is that the site visits spark conversation among the grant committee, and those conversations sometimes result in recommendations for like how much we'll basically tell you how much you should apply for from us. So we will give you guidance in terms of submitting your application. There are limited dollars that we can award every year, unfortunately. So we do offer you some cheat codes, some hints about what to ask for, and that will help you fill out your application, which is due in mid-November. So once that's the last form that you have to fill out to complete the application process. So again, questionnaire in May, a letter of intent in September, application in November. And those are the 3 forms and then there's site visits between all of those. Once we have your application, we will make recommendations to the grant committee will make recommendations to Park Pride's board of directors as to which projects to fund. And then our board votes on it in either December or January, depending on schedules and how complicated it is to pull together those recommendations for the board. And then grants are usually announced either in January or February, depending on when our board issues those has that vote. Is that what you wanted me to cover?
That's exactly it. Thank you.
Okay.
And I'll add that once you've been notified that you're an awardee, you'll be asked to sign a grant agreement, and
Yes.
details of the project cannot change after that agreement has been signed.
Right. That's an important thing because a lot of I sometimes get questions about, well, if our project comes in under budget, can we use whatever's left over to do this other thing? And the answer is no. Like the board votes on the project that is tied to that money, and so any unspent funds at the end get returned to the grant pool to be reawarded to another group. So really we're awarding more of like if you think about it, it's sort of like a scope of work, and not like a dollar amount specifically. Does that make sense?
That's to me.
Okay.
Okay.
And I wanted to add too, I know sometimes there's some questions about the presentation, but it's really to get you in line for the actual LOI and application. So you can see that the same elements that you're presenting on, the site plan, proposal, budget, that's all the expectation is of the department. I think sometimes people feel like we're adding to the load, but it's not. It's really to sort of organize you to get to that finish line, to that application. So that's all that presentation is just very short and sweet. Here's the project. And it, like I said, because all of that's going to be needed later in order to get you to that final application.
Thank you. And Paige, while you're off mute, would you mind taking these after the agreement
Sure.
is signed? What happens? Those
Sure.
first two?
So the agreement is between Park Pride and the Friends Group. So once the agreement is signed, and like I said, DeKalb County upfronts the money. And that's why it's important, and as Andrew stated, not just for their board, but also our board, to make sure that there's no changes, because that grant agreement with those estimates and that scope of work is getting approved by our Board of Commissioners. And so that is legislation that, because there's funds involved, it creates that legislation. So that's what the sooner we can get that grant agreement signed, we go to the board. Now, that is also, there's a timeline there for us. There are 3 sets of committees that each of our agenda items go through. So it's the department's responsibility to create the agenda item. That's where we list out each of the funding and the matching sources. It also gives a brief description of the project, and it also has that grant agreement attached. And that is a minimum of about a 2-month process. So just keep in mind that once the grant agreement is signed, which is usually in January, it takes till about February or March until that agenda item is fully approved. It goes through 3 committees. It goes to what is known as the Committee of the Whole, which is all 7 commissioners. Then it gets pushed to a subcommittee, which ours is PEX, I think it's Personnel Economic something committee. That's where the commissioners will discuss it with the department. And then it goes back to the Board of Commissioners, which is again all 7 votes. So it does take a little bit of time to get through that process. And what that does, and this is where I know it sounds lengthy, but again, it's government and transparency, is that's what creates the account in order for us to charge against for the vendors. So once the legislation is approved, we send those agenda items over to finance, and then finance structures the accounts. So when we're ready to pay those vendors, those purchase orders are paid against that account. So that's how that process flows. We're not able to structure a purchase order without the legislation. And all of that goes, by the grant, by the scope of work. So that's why, like I said, they're just a series of steps that need to happen. Then once we get that purchase order in place, we kind of get together, do a kickoff meeting, and we call that the notice to proceed. So that's why we also encourage to use our vendors that are already on contract or already in the system. And there's some other nuances to that. Again, we don't expect friends groups to understand our procurement policies or processes. It's why we're here to help. And we'll ensure that once we get to that time, it's a seamless process to get that purchase order in the system. So you're ready to go. And then once we have that kickoff meeting, then construction can start. So depending on the size of the project, sometimes it takes up until July to kind of get it mobilized, especially if parts need to be ordered and all those types of things. And again, the goal here is to get this grant all completed within a year's time. That's really what our main goal is. We want to be good stewards of, working with Park Pride and making sure that their funders are satisfied and that we have the most successful executed grants within that year timeline. We have been successful with that. Of course, there's always, things that do happen, and Park Pride is always very understanding if we need to get extensions and all that. But again, it's our goal as a department to be good stewards and to make sure that we can complete the grant within the grant cycle.
Great, thank you. So this little gap in between notice to proceed and ribbon cutting, that's when your project gets constructed. And after that is Park Pride asks for ribbon cuttings. Andrew, can I call on you to expand on that, or if it's not much more?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, as with any project, the closeout is an important part of project management, making sure that you acknowledge the work that went into the project, and making sure that you recognize the achievement and the change that you've made in the world is an important part of the grants process. So we do ask that once the project is complete, that you work with us to develop an event. It doesn't have to be big or fancy. It can be a collection of neighbors to celebrate the achievement. Usually there's a short program. We always invite the Parks Department to be a part of that. There's the commissioners are usually invited to be a part of that. And there's remarks, and there's clapping, and there's photos, and it's usually pretty fun. I find that to be a very satisfying part of the process, and we work with RPCA to make that happen. Importantly, the park beautification application does need to be submitted to the county for the event to make sure that they're aware of it, and so that um, they can do what they need to do on their end to prepare the park for the event, and then check in on it afterward as well and participate in it. Is there anything else that I want to say about ribbon cutting before the final report? Okay. Then the final report is really, I mentioned we're a nonprofit, right? And so storytelling is part of what we do with our funders, to make sure that our funders know that the impact that we're having and the changes that we're making really are making a difference. And that's really what the final report is about. It's about letting us know, it's our feedback loop, right? Like, did this project work out the way that you thought it would? What was maybe different, or what was unexpected? What did you learn? What went great? Are you noticing people using the new amenities? Those are all things that we love to know about, so that we can share with our funders, so that we can continue to invest into DeKalb County parks in this way. So the final report, it's sort of, oh my gosh, another form you have to fill out, yes, but and really it does help us out in terms of sustaining this program, so that other park groups like yours can apply for funding in the future.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, y'all. That was it. And now we have wanted to show some examples of successful grant projects that were completed. I'm gonna call on Mr. Caleb Wittenmeyer to see if he has any reflections on what made any of these especially successful.
Yeah, hi everybody. We've had some incredibly special projects in the past few years. In 2023, the Friends of Springbrook Park applied to beautify what they already had. They already had a community garden that had some old wooden garden beds that were kind of deteriorating. So that would be a fantastic idea to expand on that and make a whole new garden for their community. And I think they did a fantastic job. They designed these themselves, provided much of the labor to remove the old beds, and I think they turned out wonderful. In 2023, the Friends of Harrison Park made a fantastic garden area. Their Serenity Garden's fantastic. They had a little slatescape path through there so everyone can see, and signs indicating different types of vegetation that are in the area. And then in 2025, the Friends of Flat Shoals Park wanted some shade for their playground, shade structures for their playground, where it was very, very sunny in that area. People were always getting hot watching their kids play. So they successfully completed a project creating these lovely, colorful shade structures over the playground. And I think all of these are incredible examples of what can potentially happen in your park space.
Thank you. Okay. Questions and discussion time. So if you would, drop your responses in the chat to these two prompts. The first one is, what are the challenges for more groups applying, or for your group applying? And did you know there was a small change grant program?
I have a question. Because we were going through this. So we get this asked all the time, Andrew, and I know you're new to this, so if you don't know the answer, that's fine. If you could just get back to us even as a department. So I think the biggest question we get asked from groups is, there's a chair over the group. Does the chair have to be part of the grant making process, or could other just members of the group go through the process? That's probably the number one question that we get. Is, does it have to be the Friends group chair that sort of leads the process?
I don't know the answer to that. So
Okay.
I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Okay. Because that's probably the number one question that we get is, that because obviously, you know, there's a lot that the chair already does and organizes, and does the request need to come? And because I think, I'm not sure on the call, I saw Katie's with Melton, and that's what, you know, if I know Valerie Boss over there, but if it was something, a project that the group wanted to do. So that, and like I said, we've had that
Yeah,
question come up
So I'll
before,
say
so.
that, you know, that in terms of assigning a point of contact, maybe for the grant that's not the chair of the Friends group, I don't think there's any problem with that. I mean, many hands make light work. And I think that, yeah, I mean, at the risk of 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 saying something that's incorrect, I don't think we would object, and it doesn't sound like the county would object either to distributing the workload of the Friends group amongst its members.
Okay. I mean, I know for us, that's why we really encourage, you know, looking to your visioning and to your master plan, because then we already know it's a project, you know, that is wanted by the community. I think that's why we refer back to the surveys and all that from the, you know, any of those processes. So, okay, that's my question. If anybody else has
Yep.
any.
Well, speaking of master plans and visionings page, there was a Q&A question we had, Andrew, and I know you can answer this one.
Yeah,
How does Park Pride help with master plans? Can they create one?
we can. So we do periodically release applications for friends of groups. It works sort of like the grant application process, but it's more, it's less steps, it's fewer steps. It's one application that you fill out for a vision plan, and that's what we call it. And that is a 6 to 8 month planning process that Park Pride staff, it sort of works like a technical assistance grant, if you think about it like that way. Like, so it's sort of a grant, but instead of getting money, you get our brains for 6 to 8 months worth of planning, park planning and design and community engagement. And that results in a master plan for the park and a report, which is subsequently adopted by the county Board of Commissioners and becomes ideally, and I think there are a lot of examples of this, but like the park master plan, the official park master plan up for the county as well. So I mean, it's a great process, and we really enjoy working with the groups. It does require that you expand. We do ask that you branch out beyond your current Friends group membership when we do a visioning, because it is a public space, and we want to make sure that maybe voices that aren't typically represented in parks conversations have the opportunity to share their priorities for the park as well. So that was a great question, Ms. Arrington. As I don't know what park they are with, but good question.
Yeah. Well, it looks like do we have any answers? Okay. They said the challenge is matching funds, and yes, they knew about the small change grant. Thank you.
We understand match funds. I would think it's funny. I could say that all the paperwork is the challenge, but but that's why really the department is here to help. Typically, it's going to be a blend of funds, especially when it comes to the larger grants. So, and I think, again, this is just any project. If you have a strong scope, we just need to get that real world estimate, and we can help. I know this year with Lauren joining our team, we are skilled at, taking, I always say we're going to start at that high level wish list. We're going to try to get you everything you envision, you imagine. And then what we do from there is we'll kind of massage it to make sure that you have a great project. So I don't really I look at it as a positive challenge. I really do, because I think it's what we're skilled at. I think, and we can help that. It shouldn't be something that people feel challenged by, because like I said, we want you to be a successful grant, and we're here to
Right.
help and get those funds to meet those expectations. I would, like I said, I would want to know that you're more challenged by all the paperwork than the fact that you might not have enough money to do it. So we're definitely here to help. And we've also worked with groups that maybe it's not this year, but just
Right.
talking it through, we are always seeking funds in other places. We apply for grants ourselves as a department. We've been very successful in getting some grants from the Congress and from ARPA. So there's a lot of money out there to be had. All we have to know is there's a project and there's an interested group. And that's how we're here to help.
Yeah, something my boss is fond of saying is the groups that are told no, but hear not yet are the ones that prevail over
Right.
time.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
I would say persistence is also a key. If you don't get a grant this year, then as Paige said, maybe next year is the year, and they just need that extra time to scope the project or to raise the funds or whatever it is that's needed. But those are really good points.
Yeah, and that's what we also encourage, to do the small change grant first, because I think knowing the process and seeing how it operates is just wildly beneficial. So that's where I think once you kind of see that, and I would say is, even on Andrew's point, is don't you feel like well, I know Andrew's new to kind of the grant banking, but so many of our groups that once they figure it out, they come back.
That's right.
So that's another reason why we're doing this. We want to see every single Friends group get a grant, get some funds for their projects. But I think because really a lot of people that are getting awarded grants, they're just the repeats because they figured the process out. So please know that we want everybody to have a successful project out there. So, and that's why we're here.
The other thing I'll share about matching funds is that Park Pride has a good network of friends groups, and we host events that bring friends groups together so that you can share and ask questions of other groups, like, how did you make that work? Or we're having this challenge. How did your group overcome that? And so we do try to convene groups in a way that encourages peer-to-peer learning and sharing of experience. We also do educational programs throughout the year. And occasionally those will include like a fundraising workshop or something like that can help give your group ideas. I remember when I first joined, there was a DeKalb County park that raised money through an event called the Hipster Yard Sale. It was sort of a fun, creative way to raise money for their park project, and it was successful. So, it can sometimes, as Paige said, it's a good challenge to have, and you can get creative with it.
Sorry, I feel like my laptop battery is running low here. I hope you don't lose me. Okay, I don't know why it's not working. But great questions. We don't want to stop short. We have a couple minutes, but if anybody has anything else. Oh, thank you. And I don't know if you want to screenshot this or jot these down. If you have any questions after you leave here, we're like, hey, forgot to ask this, please reach out so that we can answer you.
Yes, and if you haven't already, feel free to drop your park name or your email, and I can send you this presentation or the YouTube video. Otherwise, please reach out if you have any questions. And thank you so much for the panelists and the attendees. We really appreciate it. I guess we'll stay on for 2 more minutes in case any burning questions come up.
Thank you, Andrew and Lauren. Also, I appreciate doing this. And I guess we'll make a plug for our Q4 meeting. So that will be coming up in November.
Early
Did I get that right?
Mhm.
Okay. So we'll have another quarterly meeting in November. So stay tuned for that. And this also I think we need to have a whole presentation on fundraising, to be quite honest with you. So these meetings I feel like are leading to other meetings topics. So I think the next one is security, correct? The Q4 meeting, is that security? Okay, so that's going to be a hot topic, I know. But then maybe the following one, we could talk about capital projects in general. I know that's been brought up before, and then maybe team it with some fundraising activities. We can talk about money. We can make it all about money. So, all right. Got about 60. You're probably gonna lose me.
Yeah,
I don't know
I
what's
think
going
it's
on.
okay. I think we're good.
I think we can end 1 minute early. All
All
right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.